The American Express Gold Card is undoubtedly one of the best credit cards that you can possibly get, but the only problem is that that card does have an annual fee of $250. But there is another credit card, the Capital One Savor One, that accomplishes a lot of the same things as the AMEX Gold Card, but has a $0 annual fee. And so because of that, I think the Capital One Savor One could actually be the better option for a lot of people. So in this video, I'm going to give a full comparison on the AMEX Gold Card and Capital One Savor One, and I'll discuss why I think the Capital One Savor One beats the AMEX Gold Card, but then I'll discuss the other side of the argument for why the AMEX Gold Card could actually beat the Capital One Savor One, and ultimately I'll come to a conclusion on if you could only have one of these cards, which one would win and why. So both the AMEX Gold Card and the Capital One Savor One are great daily earners that have similar goals of getting exposure to the common spend categories of grocery stores and dining. But these cards are going to have different annual fees, different benefits, and are ultimately going to be most appealing to specific types of people. So it's going to be really important that you understand the core components on each of these cards so that you understand which of these cards, the AMEX Gold Card or the Savor One, is going to be the better choice for you. And later in this video, I am going to discuss why I think the Capital One Savor One crushes the AMEX Gold Card for a lot of you. But first, let's get into the core components on each of these cards. The Capital One Savor One does not have an annual fee, but then the Savor One is currently offering a welcome bonus, in which you'll be able to receive $200 cash back if you're able to spend $1,000 or more in the first 3 months of having the card. The point multipliers on the Savor One are going to be for 3x back on dining, entertainment, popular streaming services, and grocery stores, and then 1x back on everything else. Then the American Express Gold Card has an annual fee of $250, and that card is currently offering a public welcome bonus offer of being able to receive 60,000 American Express points if you're able to spend $4,000 or more in the first 6 months of having the card. The point multipliers on the AMEX Gold Card are going to be for 4x back on restaurants, 4x back on US grocery stores, 3x back on flights, and then 1x back on everything else. Even though the Capital One Savor One does not have an annual fee, you'll still get additional point multipliers like 5x back on hotels and car rentals that are booked through the Capital One travel portal, 8x back on Capital One Entertainment, and then the Capital One Savor One is also going to give you a complimentary Uber One membership, which is going to give you some additional elevated point multipliers of 10x back on Uber and Uber Eats. On the American Express Gold Card, you're going to get a total of $240 worth of credits, which are going to be a $120 Uber credit and a $120 dining credit. The $120 dining credit is going to give you $10 in monthly statement credits for places like Grubhub, the Cheesecake Factory, and Shake Shack, and I personally use my dining credit for pickup with Grubhub at Chipotle. The $120 Uber credit is going to give you $10 in Uber cash each month for places like Uber Eats or Uber Rides, and I personally use my Uber credit for Uber Eats. Additionally, the AMEX Gold Card is also going to give you a $100 experience credit when you book a stay of 2 nights or more with the American Express Hotel Collection. But despite all of those benefits on the American Express Gold Card, I think there is a very strong argument to be made that the Capital One Savor One is going to crush this card, and here's why. First of all, the Capital One Savor One is going to give you pretty similar point multipliers to the American Express Gold Card, especially in those grocery stores and dining categories, except on the American Express Gold Card, you'll get 4x back on those categories, and then on the Savor One, you'll get 3x back on those same categories. Plus, the Savor One is going to give you some additional point multipliers that are not covered on your American Express Gold Card. So you'll get 3x back on popular streaming services and entertainment, which can cover things like your Spotify subscription or your ticket to your next sports game. Basically, the Capital One Savor One is going to give you similar point multipliers to the American Express Gold Card, which includes that exposure to those high spend categories, except the Capital One Savor One is going to give you those multipliers with zero downside, because like I said earlier, the Capital One Savor One has a $0 annual fee. Honestly, the Capital One Savor One is just a much simpler card to use because you'll still be able to use that card as a strong point earning card, minus the hassle of having to use a bunch of different credits to lower your effective fee like you have to on the AMEX Gold Card. As I mentioned earlier, the AMEX Gold Card does give you 2 $120 credits, which are that $120 dining credit and that $120 Uber credit, which can help to offset the annual fee. But at the same time, not everyone gets value from those credits, and the fact that they are use it or lose it monthly credits makes them difficult to get the full value from. Whereas the Capital One Savor One does not have that high annual fee or those different credits that you need to use, and instead you're just getting a solid point earning card with zero downside because it doesn't have an annual fee. And so if you are fine, especially with just earning straight cash back, then the Capital One Savor One can be a great option as your go-to point earning credit card. But if you do want to take your points to the next level and you want to get more than just straight cash back, then there is definitely an argument to be made for why the benefits on the American Express Gold Card are just too good to pass up, and for why the AMEX Gold Card is actually going to be a better option than the Capital One Savor One. The reason for that is because the AMEX Gold Card is going to earn flexible American Express points, which you can then use to transfer those points out to American Express's travel partners, which can allow you to double the amount of value that you're getting from your points or from those already fantastic point multipliers. This is something that is really important to me because I am on team travel, so I'm always focused on finding the best ways to maximize the value that I'm getting from my points. And not only do I always strive to double the amount of value that I get from my points with travel partners, but high-level travel redemptions like luxury hotel stays and first-class international flights can actually get me significantly more value. So while the AMEX Gold Card will by itself have that ability to have that additional travel upside, the Capital One Savor One will not by itself have the ability to transfer points out to travel partners. And instead, to transfer points out to travel partners with the Capital One Savor One, you'd need to pair that card with the Capital One Venture X, which has an annual fee of $395. So technically, travel upside is going to be cheaper on the $250 American Express Gold Card. Plus, even if you do decide to pair the Savor One with the Venture X in order to have that travel upside, American Express points are worth more than Capital One miles, and the American Express ecosystem is widely thought of as a desirable place to earn a significant amount of points. Additionally, if you are really focused on those dining and grocery store categories, then the American Express Gold Card will technically give you the higher multipliers of 4x back, and then that card will also give you 3x back on flights as well. Finally, while the two $120 credits on the American Express Gold Card can be difficult to use for some, I've personally had no issue with getting the full value from those credits and simply doing one pickup order from Uber Eats and one pickup order from Grubhub per month. So there are obviously going to be upsides and downsides to the Savor One and AMEX Gold, and both of those cards are going to be most appealing for certain types of people. But here's the thing, you can have both. Even though there is some overlap between the core benefits on the AMEX Gold and Capital One Savor One, both of these cards can actually work really well together as well. Basically, if you were to pair both of these cards together, then the AMEX Gold Card could act as your main daily earner card that gets you 4x back in two of your most common spend categories of dining and grocery stores. Then you could get the Savor One for the welcome bonus of $200 cash back, and for the fact that this card has zero downside with a $0 annual fee, and then also getting those additional point multipliers for 3x back on streaming services and entertainment. And then some of these benefits would actually work really well together too, because you'd have the ability to stack the Uber credits that you get on your AMEX Gold Card on top of the Uber One membership that you get on the Capital One Savor One. But I did say at the start of this video that I would be discussing if you could only have one of these credit cards, which one would it be and why? And my conclusion is that the Capital One Savor One is going to win and crush the AMEX Gold Card. I would argue that the most important benefit on the AMEX Gold Card and Capital One Savor One is that both of those cards are great point earning cards and that they get really strong elevated multipliers and the grocery store and dining categories, which are two really high spend categories for a lot of people. The AMEX Gold Card does have slightly higher point multipliers, but it does have a much higher annual fee. And I would argue that most people don't get the full value from the credits on the card due to simply forgetting to use them, living in an area where maybe Uber or Grubhub aren't that accessible, or having to go out of their way to use a food delivery service that they organically probably wouldn't have spent money on if they didn't have this card. So especially if you don't have either of these cards yet, then the Capital One Savor One is going to be the best card, especially to get first, because it's going to have that zero downside with the $0 annual fee. It's still going to be a solid point earning card with those elevated multipliers, and it's going to give you a much simpler card to use without the hassle of having to use all of those different credits. Don't get me wrong, I have the AMEX Gold Card and I absolutely love it, but I just think the Capital One Savor One is going to be the better option for a higher percentage of people, and it's definitely going to be the first card that I recommend getting if you don't have either of these cards yet. But if you want to see all of the other credit cards that I'm utilizing in my own credit card setup, then go ahead and watch this video next. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed the new apartment and the new setup that I got going on, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Peace.